Welcome to this Creative Instinct podcast production made for the Cambridgeshire Recovery Service, one of a series made by people navigating their recovery journey, driven by people who have been there and recognise the way.
Hi, I'm Mark. I help facilitate a family and friends group after gaining a lot of support from them via my son's addiction to drugs. The reason I turned to family and friends group was I felt isolated, I felt alone. I'd gone to family and they just didn't understand what I was going through. They just did not get it. For example, I've got one friend that told me that I should lock my son in his bedroom with just a mattress on the floor until he got over his addiction, and just feed him once a day. I mean, I couldn't do that to my son. So I'd lost a lot of friends and I lost a lot of family because the advice I was given is, well, you're helping him, aren't you? You're not being strong enough, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. But it's until you're in the grips of supporting somebody with addiction, it's easier to say. So I came to family and friends, and the first thing that hit me was I don't need to be alone. The other people in the group were there for exactly the same reason. So I could speak openly. The questions I said that might sound silly, or things I'd done that might sound silly, everybody had done them. And it wasn't me being a bad parent. It helped me realise that until I get that notion out of my head, I'm no good to my son. I love my son. He is my hero. And I say he's my hero because he's gone through mental health, he's gone through addiction, he's come out the other side, and he's now my carer. He's a lot better person. How many people can face their own prison in their own head and come out of it twice? So that's why I say he's my hero. But going back to family and friends, they were amazing. They never once made me feel unwelcome, or that I'd done anything wrong, or I'm not a good person. They say, don't dislike the person, dislike the idea, because we're all going through exactly the same things. So what may work for one may not work for somebody else. However, it did give me the strength to carry on. In my darkest days, I could go to this group feeling quite miserable and sorry for myself, and I could hear somebody else that was going through something 10 times worse than I have, and I'm thinking, well, actually I'm quite lucky. Or when mine was the worst one, the support I got from the other people going to the group was fantastic, was phenomenal. Never once did they say, oh, I wouldn't have done that, that was a bad idea. They would have just said, something different, like, perhaps in hindsight, what do you think? And they get you to think about how you react, and they make you realise that it's not your fault. It's the person with the addiction that has the choice, but you have the choice on how you respond to them either stealing or the lies. And the one thing I did find quite shocking, I suppose, the addiction and the drug taking or the alcohol taking wasn't people's main problem. It was the lies and the deceits around hiding it, that got to most people, and it did get to me the most, which I found sort of strange coming to terms with. It made me realise that I needed to look after myself, and I needed to put in boundaries, and boundaries weren't for my son, they were for me, to help keep me safe. The first boundary I wanted to put in place was, you need to respect me. Well, that wasn't a good boundary, because what I feel is respect, somebody else might not, or my son might not. So they showed me that boundaries had to be small, but ones that I could keep in place. A broken boundary is worse than no boundary. So the first boundary I put in place was, my son used to always ring me up, ask me for money, and it wouldn't be £10 or £20, it could be £50, £500, and there's just no way I could do it. So he would get 3 strikes. He asked me for money and I would say no. He asked me for money again and I'll say no, and then I would tell him, if you ask me for money again, I'm hanging up for half an hour. He would ask me again, so I'd hang up for half an hour. I would then text him that you are now unblocked, but please do not ask for money. I think the longest I ever did it was 2 days, but then I'd text him at the end. Each time that time was up, I always text him to let him know he was unstuck. That way he knew that I was still supporting him and I haven't given up on him. Putting a simple boundary in like that helped me take control of the situation, helped me feel safe, because it meant that for them 2 hours I wasn't going to hear anything. I could relax, I could have a bath, I could go and meet some friends and have a coffee without worrying whether or not he was going to ring me. I could have a good night's sleep. And then I started putting in other boundaries in, like, if you come round to my house, I want you clean, so I don't want you to be taking anything, and I don't want you shouting at me, and I don't want any abuse. So I could put in boundaries like that. And they also taught me, just as important as boundaries, self-care. And that is to look after myself, to make sure that I ate, drank, had a good night's sleep, socialised, had a bit of life myself, and I didn't hang my whole life on my son's addiction. So it stopped me becoming addicted to my son's addiction. The final straw for my son to give up was his best mate told him that he wanted him to be godfather to his daughter, but there was no way he was going to be godfather to his daughter if he was still taking, he was on ketamine, so he was on some hard stuff, and with that he then came to me and asked me to help him. And then we came to CGL, and he got a little bit of support from there, but because of his anxiety he couldn't meet in and his mental health, he was no good going to groups, so he did 1 or 2 solo things, and the threat of not seeing his goddaughter, or not being goddaughter to his best friend's daughter, and also he said it put things in perspective for him, how poorly I'd become, and the fact that he wanted to help support me, which is now why he is my full-time carer. I'm the only member of my son's family, including my side. He doesn't speak to his mum, his 2 sisters. I'm the only member of my son's family that still has anything to do with him. Even now he's 3 years clean, who would wake up one day and say, do you know what, I'm going to do something to piss off the whole of my family, to isolate me? Nobody. Once his mum and them walked out, I thought, this isn't right. This is Ryan. Ryan would not. He adored his mum. Him and his mum, I was quite envious of the relationship they had. And I thought, this isn't right. And I sat down and thought one night what I can do about it. And I wanted something positive to come from the pain that I'd gone through, watching my son destroy his life. And if my story, or my son's story, can help just one person, then it would be well worth it. And that's why I became a volunteer and then a facilitator of family and friends group. I get so much out of it because it reminds me of the journey that we'd been on, and it reminds me how bad life was, but it also gives hope to others. The fact that my son's now clean, has been clean for 3 years, he's now officially my carer. Hope. And hope is an amazing thing to have.
Your story can help others, and we'd love to hear it. Wherever you've been, wherever you are, how you got there. Whatever, it's up to you.